about, well, maybe we should just take the base by force, and, just saying ridiculous things like that.
Yeah.
Now, little did we know that the security guys had snuck up on us, and they were no more than 6 feet from our noses.
Listening to you say things like, hey,
right, and they had no idea what was going on. So we're sitting there talking, and out of nowhere, a sniper, not a sniper scope, a night vision scope, falls on the ground. We see this little green light fall down and roll. And it came out of nowhere. And we had no idea. Anyway, the guy had dropped it. Yeah. So, they walked forward and, made everyone go back up to the road. They call in the sheriff. And
would these have been the Wackenhut security people?
As far as I know. I had taken off into the desert because we had all assumed if I was caught, there was a problem.
Well, that's a good assumption.
Because, these guys could have just wandered out there and been looking what's going on. But if they saw somebody from the inside there... So I took, well, I'm not even going to say that. I took off into the desert. And, they had counted how many people were there.
Toward or away from the area?
Away from the area.
Away from the area.
Out into the desert. And
just trying to get away.
Saw there were 3 or 4 people there. And then when we got back up to the road, and the sheriff came out from there, I think his name was La Moreau, who's still around there. And that's when I reemerged, and he said, wait, we got a discrepancy. There's an extra person here. Well, what's his name? And he took my license, read it into the base, and, he said, okay, well, everybody can go. And the following day I was called for a debriefing down at Indian Springs Air Force Base, which I had never been to before.
They didn't, that's very interesting. They didn't throw you in jail. A lot of people...
No, they didn't do anything.
They spend the night in jail, a lot of them.
Now, the second they heard my name, the second he read the license, they said, let everybody go. And it was the following day when I got called in, and Dennis, who was the security supervisor at the time, drove to my house, and we went down there in my car, and that's when it really hit the fan. And, kind of to make a long story short, they were pissed, to say the least. And
well, don't make it too short. This is pretty interesting stuff. I'd actually like to get some details of that. You called it a debriefing. Probably it was more like a let's see how scared we can get this guy.
Well, that's exactly what it was.
All right, then hold on to that thought, and we'll be right back. There is indeed, just over the mountain from me, a place called Indian Springs, and there is an Air Force base there, and that's where they called you, Bob?
Right.
Summoned you, said you, would you get one of the calls? It's now noon, you will be, you'll be up here at some certain time, or what?
This was a little different. This Dennis called me, who was my security supervisor at the time, called me personally and came to my house, which was very unusual.
Oh.
And then we both drove down in the same car to Indian Springs, which is an auxiliary Air Force base in this little town, which is, the base is essentially shut down. But I guess some of it, remains operational. In any case, that's where they took me.
Uh-huh.
And that's when they started the debriefing. The first thing they brought up was, of course, that, tremendous breach in security, and they wanted to know everybody that I had told anything to, why I went ahead and did it, and I was pretty straightforward with them, but they tried to be as intimidating as possible, and
were you threatened outright?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, and so was my wife's life. So I became very concerned about that.
Do you actually care to tell us what they said to you? I mean, did they say, you'll end up a lump in the desert like so many others, or
there was a lot of fear present at the time, and I don't remember verbatim, what tagline they used, but it did get my attention.
Yeah.
And this is when they brought up the transcripts of my wife's affair on the phone.
Oh, that they told you?
Yeah, so I found out from them.
At that moment?
Yeah, at that moment.
Wonderful.
This was something they had to slap in my face.
Gee whiz, I wonder why they picked that moment to tell you.
Well, who knows? But anyway, that's that's how the separation between us really came about. It was because of that, because of, bringing my friends out there to see what was going on, and, all the, yeah. So that's really what set everything in motion.
All right. A lot of stories have flown around about what happened, Bob, after that. For example, we have the mutual friend of John Lear, who now, by the way, doesn't talk about any of this anymore, doesn't want any publicity. You can't blame him. He's lost some jobs. He's back working. He's doing fine, and he just doesn't want to talk about this anymore, and I don't blame him. Do you?
No. I think John's rave now is about the dump up there at Yucca Mountain.
Yeah.
About the nuke waste dump. And,
sure.
It's the one thing I agree with John Lear is, I know everyone in Las Vegas doesn't want it there, but if you're going to put it anywhere in the country, why not put it where you've already exploded 100 atomic bombs? It's already a wasteland, at that part of the test site, so.
Well, you're
anyway,
right. That's a big controversy. Anyway, listen, there was a big controversy about something called Element 115, which was said to be some kind of fuel, an element we don't have now on Earth, that was the fuel or the what? What can you do?
Well, I guess you could call it a fuel. It's what made the reactor operate. And it's a super heavy element, something that we've theorized can exist. People think back about, high school or college chemistry. You recall that as the elements get heavier, once you pass uranium, they decay. And some decay very fast. As the elements get very heavy, their half-lives become extremely short, sometimes microseconds. So they're just around, they exist just for a blink of an eye. Well, it's been theorized, and has been some time ago, that there are islands of stability. Somewhere higher up in the periodic chart, there are places where groups of elements would again become stable. And this occurs, what theoretically was to occur in the 114, 115 area. And again,
an island of stability,
right, where these elements are relatively stable. And again, there is supposed to be another island of stability somewhere up in the 200s. But these are unattainable things, and no one says that nature has ever produced them, except
at
maybe
the moment. But when you talked about element 115 years ago, so many years ago, since then, interestingly, we progressed to the impossible. In other words, since you actually talked about it, they've been discovering elements moving up, right on up the chart.
Oh, they're getting close.
Yeah, they're getting very close.
They're getting close, and the half-lives are getting longer.
Yeah, I know. People back then hoo-hawed at this, but now they're not hoo-hawing so hard anymore because we're getting pretty close.
Right, and I'm sure eventually they'll synthesize it somehow. They use instead of bombarding it with neutrons now, they use this new fusion technique where they fuse the nuclei of two other elements together, which is kind of an odd way to do it, but it's got, I think the Lab for Heavy Ion Research in Darmstadt, Germany, has pioneered most of the new heavy elements, and, mark my words, they're going to be the guys that synthesize 115.
Huh. Bob, there was talk that you spirited some element 115 out of S4. Is that true?
Where'd you hear that, Art?
Oh, I got friends too, Do you want to say no?
Comment about
you don't want to comment on that?
No, I don't want to comment about that. But it's that would be a good sledgehammer.
All right. Well, we'll just we'll leave that one alone, I guess. Do you think that since the time that and you know what we didn't cover, we missed it. You described the one craft, but at one point while you were there, you saw a total of what did you say? 9 craft?
9 craft.
9 craft, and
if I recall, that was the